He was a self-made millionaire with a perfect life and a pregnant wife waiting at home. But Richard Hallberg risked it all for a secret getaway to Bora Bora with his stunning mistress, Clara. He thought he had the perfect cover story: a boring business conference in Tokyo. He believed his wife, Samantha, was too naive, too in love to ever suspect. He was wrong. While he was sipping champagne in paradise, Samantha wasn't just crying. She was plotting. And what she did next didn't just shock him, it systematically destroyed his entire world. The scent of money was the first thing you noticed in Richard Hallberg's world. It wasn't the crass, loud smell of new cash, but the subtle, aged aroma of old wealth, a fragrance woven into the very fabric of their palatial home in the Hollywood Hills. It clung to the plush, cream-colored carpets, the original Rothkos hanging on the walls, and the floor-to-ceiling glass windows that offered a panoramic view of a Los Angeles that seemed to bow at their feet. For Samantha Hallberg, who was 7 months pregnant, this scent had started to feel less like a perfume and more like a beautifully crafted anesthetic, numbing her to the gilded cage she had willingly walked into. She stood before the vast expanse of glass, one hand resting protectively on the perfect swell of her belly, watching the city lights begin to twinkle like a fallen constellation. Richard was behind her, his voice a low, persuasive hum as he spoke on the phone. He was always on the phone. No, Peter. The deal has to close by Friday. I don't care what you have to do. I'll be incommunicado for a week. A complete digital detox," he said, a small, self-satisfied smile playing on his lips. Samantha didn't turn around. She knew that smile. It was the one he wore when he was orchestrating a particularly ruthless corporate takeover, or when he was lying. Lately, the two had become indistinguishable. "A digital detox," she murmured to the reflection of her tired face in the window. The woman staring back at her looked like a stranger. Her once vibrant eyes, the color of warm honey, were now clouded with a perpetual sadness. Her blonde hair, usually styled to perfection, was pulled back in a simple, unadorned ponytail. Pregnancy had softened her features, but anxiety had sharpened them, creating a portrait of weary beauty. Richard ended his call with a decisive snap of his designer phone case. He crossed the room in 3 long, confident strides, his expensive Italian leather shoes making no sound on the thick rug. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. He was a handsome man, with sharp, intelligent features, piercing blue eyes, and a charisma that could charm the most hardened cynic. It was this charisma that had captured her heart, made her believe in his promises of a shared future, a partnership. "Thinking about baby names again?" he asked, his voice now gentle, the ruthless CEO replaced by the doting husband. It was a seamless transition, one he performed with practiced ease. "I was thinking about your digital detox," she replied, her voice flat. "It's sudden, this conference in Tokyo. It's a huge opportunity, darling," he said, kissing her temple. "The keynote speaker. Think of the prestige. It's for us. For our family. For us." The words echoed in the hollow space that had grown between them. Everything Richard did was supposedly for them. The 16-hour workdays, the last-minute business trips, the constant draining social events where she had to play the role of the perfect, adoring wife. It was all for the magnificent future he was building. But Samantha was beginning to realize that in this grand architectural plan, she was not the partner, but merely a beautiful, decorative fixture. "I just wish you didn't have to go," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Not now. The baby." "Shh," he soothed, turning her around to face him. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. "It's just a week. My flight is in 3 hours. I've arranged for your sister to stay with you. You won't be alone for a minute, and I'll call you the second I land." His eyes were sincere, his touch tender. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to believe him. She leaned into his embrace, the familiar scent of his expensive cologne a comforting poison. But then her eyes fell on his travel bag, already packed and waiting by the door. It was a sleek, black leather duffel, a brand she didn't recognize. And next to it, a smaller, more feminine carry-on, in a shade of blush pink. A cold dread washed over her. "Is someone traveling with you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Richard's expression didn't flicker. "Just my new assistant, Clara. She's handling the logistics. A real lifesaver. You'd like her, Clara." The name hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Samantha had seen her once, a stunningly beautiful woman with raven hair and a predatory grace, during a brief visit to Richard's office. She had introduced herself as a consultant. Samantha had felt a pang of jealousy then, a feeling she had quickly dismissed as hormonal paranoia. Now, that paranoia returned with a vengeance. "I see," was all she could manage. Richard, sensing her withdrawal, tightened his grip. "Samantha, don't do this. Don't let your imagination run away with you. This is a business trip. Nothing more. I love you. You and our baby are my entire world." He kissed her then, a deep, passionate kiss that was meant to reassure, to silence her doubts. But all Samantha could taste was the lie. 3 hours later, she stood at the same window, watching the black town car that carried her husband disappear down the winding driveway. Her sister Erin was bustling around in the kitchen, her cheerful chatter about baby-proofing the mansion a stark contrast to the storm raging inside Samantha. She felt a kick, a sharp, insistent reminder of the life growing within her. Her son. A son who would be born into this gilded cage. A son who would have a father who was a master of deception. A sudden, fierce resolve ignited within her. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in years, a spark of the determined, independent woman she had been before Richard had swept her off her feet and into his carefully constructed world. She would not let her son grow up in a house built on lies. With a newfound purpose, she walked over to Richard's home office, a room she rarely entered. It was his sanctuary, a testament to his power and success. The large mahogany desk was neat, almost sterile. But Samantha knew Richard. He was a man of contingencies, of hidden compartments and secret codes. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for something out of place. And then she saw it. Tucked away on a bookshelf, behind a row of leather-bound first editions, was a small, unassuming black notebook. It was the kind of thing most people would overlook. But Samantha had seen him write in it once, late at night, when he thought she was asleep. Her heart pounding, she took the notebook down. It wasn't locked. With trembling hands, she opened it. The pages were filled with Richard's neat, precise handwriting. It wasn't business notes or stock market figures. It was a log, a detailed, meticulous log of his affair with Clara. Dates, locations, expensive gifts, and at the end, a detailed itinerary for their business trip to Tokyo. Except they weren't going to Tokyo. They were going to Bora Bora. The notebook fell from her numb fingers. The city lights outside blurred into a meaningless smear of color. The gilded cage had shattered, and Samantha was finally, terrifyingly, free. The world tilted on its axis. For a long moment, Samantha couldn't breathe. The air in the opulent office, usually kept at a precise, cool temperature, felt thick and suffocating. The notebook lay on the floor, its pages splayed open like a fallen bird, the neat, damning script a testament to a life she never knew she was living. Bora Bora. The name itself was a mockery, a paradise destination for a love that was a complete fabrication. Her knees gave way, and she sank onto the plush carpet, a silent scream trapped in her throat. The pain was a physical entity, a shard of ice piercing her heart and spreading its tendrils through her veins. Every memory, every shared laugh, every tender touch was now tainted, replaying in her mind as a scene from a well-rehearsed play. She was the unwitting audience, the fool who had given a standing ovation to a performance of deceit. Tears finally came. hot and furious, blurring the city lights into a chaotic swirl of neon. She wept for the woman she had been, the hopeful, trusting girl who had fallen in love with a charismatic illusion. She wept for the baby inside her, an innocent soul tethered to a legacy of lies. The weight of the betrayal was crushing, a physical pressure on her chest that made it hard to draw a full breath. "Samantha, what's wrong? I heard a thud." Erin's voice cut through the fog of her grief. Her sister stood in the doorway, her cheerful expression dissolving into one of deep concern as she took in the scene. Samantha on the floor, the scattered notebook, the raw despair on her face. "Oh, honey," Erin whispered, rushing to her side and gathering her into a fierce embrace. She didn't ask questions, not at first. She just held her, her solid, comforting presence a lifeline in the swirling vortex of Samantha's emotions. Erin, with her practical nature and no-nonsense attitude, had always been Samantha's anchor. She had been wary of Richard from the start, her skepticism a quiet hum beneath the loud chorus of his charm. He's... Samantha couldn't form the words. She could only point a trembling finger at the notebook. Erin picked it up. Her eyes, a shade of green so different from Samantha's honey brown, scanned the pages, her expression hardening with each line. The silence in the room was broken only by Samantha's ragged sobs. When Erin finally looked up, her face was a mask of cold fury. "That son of a bitch," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "He's not in Tokyo." "Bora Bora," Samantha choked out. "With her, Clara." "I'm going to kill him," Erin declared, her hands clenching into fists. "I'm going to fly to Bora Bora and I'm going to—" "No," Samantha said, her voice surprisingly firm. The fire in Erin's eyes had ignited something in her. The initial shock was beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, clear anger. Crying wouldn't change anything. Falling apart was what he would expect. It was what he counted on. The docile, dependent wife, too broken to fight back. She pushed herself up, using Erin's arm for support. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her gaze falling on her reflection in the darkened window. The woman staring back was no longer just a sad, betrayed wife. There was a new light in her eyes, a flicker of steel. It was the awakening of a woman who had been dormant for too long. "Killing him is too easy," Samantha said, her voice steady. "He built this empire on lies. He built us on a lie. I'm not going to let him get away with it. I'm not going to be the victim in his story." Erin looked at her, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Now you're talking. What's the plan?" The plan. A week ago, her plan for the day wouldn't have extended beyond choosing a paint color for the nursery. Now she had to orchestrate the dismantling of a millionaire's life, her husband's life. "First," Samantha began, her mind racing, "I need to understand everything. His finances, his company, not the glossy version he presents to the world, but the real picture, the skeletons, the vulnerabilities. Richard was meticulous, a master of control. But he was also arrogant. He believed he was untouchable, that his pregnant wife was safely tucked away in their gilded cage, too naive and too in love to ever question him. That arrogance was his weakness. He has a lawyer, Michael Chen, Samantha thought aloud, and a CFO, Peter Vance. They're loyal to him. They'll stonewall me. So we go around them, Erin said, her mind already working, a strategist in her own right. Exactly. Samantha walked over to the mahogany desk, her movements now filled with purpose. She ran her hand over the smooth, polished surface. This desk was the epicenter of his power, and for the next week, it was hers. She sat down in his large leather chair. It felt empowering. She opened his laptop. It was password protected, of course, but she knew him. She knew the patterns of his mind. He used dates that were significant to him, to his achievements. She tried the date of his first major acquisition. Denied. The date he made his first million. Denied. She paused, thinking. What was the one thing he was proudest of? The one thing that truly defined his sense of self? It wasn't her. It wasn't their marriage. It was the day he founded his company, Hallberg Industries. She typed in the date, the 08/15/2015. The screen flickered, and the desktop appeared. A wave of triumph washed over her. She was in. For the next few hours, with Aaron feeding her coffee and snacks, Samantha delved into the digital labyrinth of Richard's life. She found files within files, encrypted folders, and offshore accounts she never knew existed. The scale of his wealth and his deception was staggering. He hadn't just lied about his affair. He had built a complex financial fortress designed to protect his assets from everyone, including her. The prenuptial agreement she had signed without a second thought now seemed like a declaration of war. But hidden within a folder labeled Contingencies, she found what she was looking for. It was a list of contacts, not just business associates, but people who operated in the gray areas of the corporate world. Hackers, private investigators, and one name that stood out, Laura Vance. Samantha's breath caught. Laura Vance, Peter Vance's ex-wife. The notes next to her name were brief and cryptic. Forensic accountant, knows where the bodies are buried, bitter. A slow, predatory smile touched Samantha's lips. It was a smile that mirrored the one she had seen on Richard's face so many times. It was the smile of someone who had just found their opponent's queen unprotected. She picked up the phone, her hand steady. She ignored the expensive multi-line office phone on the desk and used her own personal cell. She looked at Aaron, her eyes blazing with a newfound fire. "It's time to make a call," she said. She dialed the number. It rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. "Laura Vance." "Ms. Vance," Samantha said, her voice calm and clear, betraying none of the turmoil that had racked her just hours before. "My name is Samantha Hallberg. I'm Richard Hallberg's wife. I believe you and I have a mutual interest in discussing my husband's creative accounting. I have access to his private server, and a week before he gets back from Bora Bora. I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer for your time." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then a low, appreciative chuckle. "Mrs. Hallberg," Laura Vance replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. "You have my undivided attention." The meeting was set for the following morning at a discreet coffee shop in Larchmont Village, a place far removed from the glitzy, high-powered lunch spots Richard frequented. Samantha chose it specifically for its anonymity. She arrived 10 minutes early, her pregnancy a convenient disguise. People tended to look away from heavily pregnant women, their gazes softening with a kind of gentle pity, assuming a vulnerability that, for Samantha, had become a shield. She had dressed carefully, not in the designer labels Richard preferred, but in a simple, elegant maternity dress that spoke of quiet confidence, not inherited wealth. She had spent the night not sleeping, but studying. With Aaron by her side, she had navigated the labyrinth of Richard's files, downloading everything that seemed important onto a heavily encrypted hard drive. The scale of his financial duplicity was breathtaking. It wasn't just about hiding money. It was about creating an entirely separate financial identity, a shadow empire built on shell corporations and offshore accounts. Laura Vance arrived exactly on time. She was a woman in her late 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her salt and pepper hair cut in a chic, no-nonsense bob. She exuded an aura of competence and contained fury. She was, Samantha realized, a woman who had been underestimated before and had made those who did so regret it profoundly. "Mrs. Hallberg," Laura said, her voice as crisp as her suit, as she slid into the booth opposite Samantha. She didn't offer a handshake. "Ms. Vance, thank you for meeting me," Samantha replied, her own voice steady. A waitress appeared, but Laura waved her away. "I'm not here for coffee. You said you had something for me." Samantha slid the encrypted hard drive across the table. "This is a complete mirror of my husband's private server. I believe you'll find the files under Project Nightingale particularly interesting. It seems to be his name for the financial infrastructure he set up to, shall we say, minimize his marital assets. Laura's eyebrows shot up. She pulled a small, sleek tablet from her briefcase, connected the drive, and within seconds, her fingers were flying across the screen. For several minutes, the only sound was the clatter of the coffee shop and the soft tapping of Laura's fingers. Samantha waited, her heart pounding a steady rhythm against her ribs. Finally, Laura looked up, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. It was the smile of a predator who had just been handed the keys to the zoo. Project Nightingale, she mused. How poetic. The man always did have a flair for the dramatic. This is comprehensive. I was hoping you'd think so, Samantha said. Peter, my ex-husband, he was the architect of all this, Laura said, her eyes scanning the files with a mixture of professional admiration and personal disgust. I always knew he was brilliant, but I never thought he'd be this reckless. This is financial artistry, and it's monumentally illegal. I need to know everything, Samantha said, leaning forward. Every shell corporation, every hidden account, every asset he thinks is untouchable. I don't just want a divorce, Ms. Vance. I want to dismantle his empire. I want to take back what he stole from me and what he plans to steal from our son. Laura studied her for a long moment, her sharp gaze assessing, calculating. This isn't just about the money for you, is it? No, Samantha admitted, her voice dropping to a whisper. It's about justice. He built a life on the assumption that I was a fool. He needs to learn that I'm not. Good, Laura said with a decisive nod. Because a purely emotional client is a liability. A vengeful one, however, can be a great asset. This goes beyond a simple divorce settlement. We're talking about wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. If we play this right, Richard won't just lose his money. He could lose his freedom. The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. The thought of Richard in prison sent a shiver down Samantha's spine, a mixture of fear and a dark, satisfying thrill. What do you need from me? Samantha asked. Access, Laura replied. Continued access to his network, if you can maintain it, and complete trust. I'm going to bring in a legal team, the best white-collar crime specialists in the country. They're sharks, Samantha. Once they smell blood, they don't let go. But they're expensive. Very expensive. I have some funds of my own, Samantha began, thinking of the trust fund her parents had left her, a sum that now seemed pitifully small compared to Richard's vast fortune. Laura held up a hand. Don't worry about that. We'll make Richard pay for his own destruction. There's a provision in many prenuptial agreements, even ironclad ones like yours, for discovery and legal fees if one party can be proven to have engaged in fraudulent concealment of assets. And oh, he has, beautifully so. She pointed to a file on her tablet. Look here, a Cayman Islands Corporation, Seraphim Holdings. It holds the deed to a penthouse in New York, a villa in Lake Como, and a collection of vintage cars, all purchased in the last 2 years. All, I assume, conveniently left off his financial disclosures to you. Samantha felt a wave of nausea. The villa in Lake Como. He had told her it belonged to a client. He had even shown her pictures, lamenting that they were too busy to take a vacation there. He's a sociopath, Aaron's voice said from beside her. Samantha jumped. She hadn't even realized her sister had slipped into the booth next to her. Aaron gave Laura a nod. She has my full support, and my savings, for what it's worth. What's the first move? Laura's smile widened. The first move is to let him enjoy his vacation. We need him blissfully unaware in Bora Bora, sipping cocktails with his mistress. We need him to get comfortable, to believe he's gotten away with it. While he's sunning himself, we're going to be preparing a storm he can't even imagine. She turned to Samantha. Go home. Act normal. If he calls, be the loving, slightly needy wife he expects. Complain about your swollen ankles. Ask him if he's eating properly. Do not, under any circumstances, let him suspect that anything has changed. Your greatest weapon right now is his arrogance. The advice was sound. but the thought of speaking to him, of feigning affection, made her stomach churn. "I can do it," Samantha said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "I know you can," Laura said. "Now, I'm going to take this hard drive and disappear for 48 hours. I'll be in touch with a list of preliminary injunctions we need to file. We're going to freeze his assets, all of them. By the time he steps off that private jet, he's going to find out that his gilded world has been put on ice." As Laura packed up her things and left, Samantha felt a profound shift in her reality. The grief was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but it was now overlaid with a sense of purpose, a cold, clear determination. She was no longer just a victim of Richard's betrayal. She was the architect of his ruin. That evening, as she sat in the sterile perfection of her living room, her phone rang. The caller ID flashed. Richard. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She took a deep breath, looked at Aaron, who gave her a reassuring nod, and answered. "Richard," she said, pitching her voice to sound sleepy and soft. "Hey, darling." His voice was warm, intimate, the sound of the ocean faintly audible in the background. "Did I wake you? I'm so sorry about the time difference." "It's okay," she murmured. "I was just resting. My ankles are the size of grapefruits." "My poor girl," he cooed, the sympathy dripping with insincerity. "Just a few more days. I miss you like crazy. This conference is a real bore without you." Samantha closed her eyes, picturing him on a white sand beach, Clara draped over him. The image fueled her resolve. "I miss you too," she lied. "Tell me everything. Is Tokyo amazing?" And as Richard launched into a detailed, fictitious account of his keynote speech and the boring business dinners, Samantha listened, playing her part to perfection. She was the loving wife, the naive fool. And with every word he spoke, he was unknowingly tightening the noose. That she, with the help of Laura Vance, was carefully, meticulously placing around his neck. The next 4 days were a masterclass in deception. Samantha lived a dual life. To the outside world and to Richard, she was the expectant mother, nesting and waiting for her husband's return. She attended her prenatal yoga class, had lunch with friends, and fielded Richard's nightly calls from Tokyo, each conversation a carefully choreographed performance of wifely devotion. She would listen to his fabricated stories of boardrooms and networking events, all while picturing him on a sun-drenched beach, the sound of the waves a mocking soundtrack to his lies. "The deal went through, darling," he'd said on the third night, his voice filled with false modesty. "The Japanese investors were blown away. This is a game-changer for us." "That's wonderful, Richard," Samantha had replied, her voice a perfect blend of pride and affection. "I'm so proud of you." Meanwhile, in the secret inner sanctum of Richard's home office, a war room was taking shape. Laura Vance, true to her word, had assembled a formidable team. There was Jonathan Marks, a silver-haired, shark-like lawyer whose specialty was eviscerating corporate titans on the witness stand, and a young, tech-savvy paralegal named Sophie, who could navigate the dark corners of the internet with terrifying efficiency. They worked with a quiet, focused intensity, fueled by coffee and a shared sense of righteous purpose. The mahogany desk was now covered in laptops, legal documents, and complex diagrams mapping out Richard's financial empire. Laura was the general, directing her troops with precision. "He's using a series of interlocking LLCs to obscure ownership of the real estate," Laura explained, pointing to a flowchart on a large monitor. "It's a classic Russian nesting doll structure, but he made a mistake. He used the same law firm in the Bahamas to register 3 of the key holding companies. That's our entry point." Samantha found herself surprisingly adept in this new world. Her art history degree, which Richard had often patronizingly dismissed as a cute hobby, had trained her to see patterns, to understand provenance, and to trace the history of an object, or in this case, a transaction. She was able to connect dots that even Laura's team had missed, linking a shell corporation to the purchase of a specific piece of art, a multi-million-dollar Basquiat that Richard had claimed was a long-term lease. It's not leased, Samantha had said, pointing to the documents she'd unearthed from a folder labeled Household Insurance. He bought it outright at a private auction in Geneva. He used a proxy bidder, but the insurance policy is in the name of Oakhaven Enterprises, which is another one of his shell companies. Jonathan Marks had looked at her with newfound respect. Mrs. Halberg, you have a gift for this. My husband provided an excellent education in the art of deception, she had replied dryly. Her greatest contribution, however, was the Trojan horse. On the fourth day, Sophie, the paralegal, hit a wall. I can't get past this final firewall, she said, frustrated. It protects his personal trading account, the one he uses for his most sensitive stock manipulations. It's a proprietary encryption, something I've never seen before. This was the heart of the operation, the account that held the bulk of Richard's liquid wealth, the money he could move quickly and easily. Without access to it, their asset freezing strategy would be incomplete. Samantha looked at the screen, at the lines of code that represented a digital fortress. She thought about Richard, about his arrogance, his belief in his own intellectual superiority. His password for the laptop had been an act of hubris. This would be too. It wouldn't be a random string of characters. It would be something personal, something that fed his ego. What does he love more than money? She asked the room. Himself, Erin muttered from the corner, where she was acting as a combination of bodyguard and caterer. Samantha shook her head. No, he loves the idea of a dynasty, a legacy. Her eyes widened. The baby. She walked over to the keyboard. He's been obsessed with one name for our son, a name from his family, a name he thinks sounds powerful. She typed in the name Theodore. Nothing. Add his own name, Laura suggested. He's an egomaniac. Samantha typed Theodore Richard Halberg. Nothing. She sighed, frustrated. Then an idea sparked. It was a long shot, a detail so small and intimate she had almost forgotten it. During one of their early, happier dates, they had talked about their dreams. Richard had confessed, in a rare moment of vulnerability, that his ultimate goal wasn't just to be rich, but to be a kingmaker, a man who pulled the strings of the world. He had a favorite quote from a Roman emperor. With trembling fingers, she typed it in. It was a phrase he had once whispered to her, telling her it was the secret to his success. Invictus maneo, I remain unconquered. The screen flashed. Access granted. The room erupted in a collective gasp. Sophie stared at the screen, her mouth agape. My God, she whispered, we're in. What they found was more damning than they could have imagined. It wasn't just hidden wealth, it was evidence of insider trading, market manipulation, and a conspiracy to bankrupt a smaller, rival tech company. Richard wasn't just a cheat, he was a criminal. This is it, Jonathan Marks said, his voice grim. This is the kill shot. We have enough here to not only freeze every penny he has, but to trigger a full-blown SEC investigation. He's finished. Samantha felt a cold wave of finality wash over her. This was the point of no return. That night, when Richard called, his voice was lighter, happier than it had been all week. Last night in Tokyo, my love, he said. I can't wait to get home to you. I've bought you the most incredible gift. I can't wait to see it, Samantha said, her voice a perfect imitation of excitement. She knew what the gift was. Laura's team had found the receipt, a 15-carat canary diamond necklace, purchased from a boutique jeweler in Bora Bora. It was a gift for his mistress, one he would likely claim to have bought for his wife. I love you, Samantha, he said, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. I love you too, she replied, and for the first time the lie didn't taste like ash. It tasted like victory. After she hung up, she turned to her team. He's coming home tomorrow. Is everything ready? Jonathan Marks nodded, a grim smile on his face. The injunctions will be filed the moment the banks open in New York. The SEC will receive an anonymous tip with the contents of this hard drive an hour later. By the time his plane touches down in Los Angeles, his credit cards will be declined, His bank accounts will be frozen, and his company's stock will be in freefall. Samantha took a deep breath. The storm was ready to break. She, the quiet, unassuming wife, had built the perfect Trojan horse, and Richard was flying it home himself, completely oblivious to the army hidden inside. The day of Richard's return was unnaturally bright, the Los Angeles sun casting sharp, unforgiving shadows across the manicured lawns of their estate. Samantha felt a strange sense of calm, the eye of the hurricane she had so meticulously created. Aaron was a nervous wreck, pacing the length of the vast living room, while Samantha sat serenely in an armchair, one hand resting on her belly, feeling the gentle, rhythmic kicks of her son. "I can't believe you're so calm," Aaron said for the 10th time. "He's going to walk through that door any minute. What if he gets violent? What if he... I don't know, what if he tries to sweet-talk you?" "He will," Samantha said, her voice even. "That's his primary weapon. But it won't work. Not anymore. I'm not the same person I was a week ago." It was true. The woman who had wept on the office floor was gone. In her place was a woman who had stared into the abyss of her husband's deceit and had found not fear, but strength. She had discovered a resilience she never knew she possessed, a mind for strategy that had been lying dormant beneath years of marital complacency. At precisely 3:15 p.m., the purr of an expensive engine announced his arrival. Samantha watched from the window as the black town car pulled up the driveway. The driver opened the rear door, and Richard emerged, looking tanned, rested, and infuriatingly handsome in a crisp linen shirt and designer sunglasses. He exuded the casual confidence of a man who owned the world. A moment later, a second figure emerged from the car. Clara. She was even more beautiful in person, with a model's figure and an air of sultry entitlement. She laughed at something Richard said, placing a familiar hand on his arm. The gesture was so casual, so proprietary, it sent a fresh wave of anger through Samantha. "The nerve!" Aaron hissed, standing beside her at the window. "He brought her here? To your home?" "He's arrogant," Samantha said, her voice cold. "He believes he's untouchable. He thinks I'm a fool. He's about to learn how wrong he is." They watched as Richard handed Clara her blush-pink carry-on, gave her a discreet but lingering kiss on the cheek, and sent her on her way in the same car. Then he turned towards the house, his face transforming, the smug lover replaced by the eager, returning husband. Samantha moved away from the window and took her position in the center of the living room. Aaron stood a few feet behind her, a silent, supportive sentinel. The front door opened. "Darling, I'm home!" Richard's voice boomed through the marble foyer. He strode into the living room, his arms open wide, a dazzling smile on his face. "There's my beautiful wife. God, I've missed you." He moved to embrace her, but Samantha held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. The smile on his face faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "Richard," she said, her voice clear and steady. "We need to talk." "Of course, darling," he said, his smile returning, though slightly strained. "But can it wait? I've been on a plane for 15 hours and Did you have a nice time in Bora Bora?" The question dropped into the silent room like a stone. The color drained from Richard's face, his carefully constructed composure shattered, leaving behind a mask of pure shock. What are you talking about?" he stammered, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape route. "I was in Tokyo, at a conference." "Don't lie to me, Richard," Samantha said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Not anymore. I know everything. I know about Clara. I know about the overwater bungalow at the St. Regis. I know about the 15-carat canary diamond necklace you bought her." She took a step closer, holding his gaze. "And I know about Project Nightingale. I know about Seraphim Holdings, the penthouse in New York, the villa in Lake Como. I know about the insider trading, the market manipulation, the conspiracy to defraud your rivals." Richard stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He looked from Samantha's cold, resolute face to Aaron's furious one. The hunter had just realized he was the one in the trap, How? He whispered, the single word encompassing a universe of disbelief. You underestimated me, Samantha said simply. You thought I was just a pretty accessory to your perfect life. You were wrong. His shock was rapidly turning to anger. You went through my things? My computer? He snarled, his voice a low growl. You have no idea what you've done. Oh, I think I do, Samantha replied calmly. I've simply leveled the playing field. Just then, Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression turning from anger to panic. It buzzed again, and again, a relentless cascade of notifications. What's happening? He demanded, his eyes wide with fear as he scrolled through the messages. My accounts. They're frozen. My credit cards are being declined. The stock. It's plummeting. What did you do? I did what you taught me to do, Richard, Samantha said. I protected my assets. Our son's assets. He looked at her. Truly looked at her. For the first time in years. He wasn't seeing the docile, adoring wife. He was seeing a stranger, a formidable opponent who had outmaneuvered him at every turn. You, he breathed, a mixture of awe and hatred in his voice. This was you. With a little help, Samantha said, gesturing vaguely towards the office. Desperation clawed at him. He tried to revert to his most trusted tactic, manipulation. He softened his expression, his eyes welling with crocodile tears. Samantha, baby, please, he begged, taking a step towards her. We can fix this. Whatever you think you know, it's a misunderstanding. I love you. It's always been you. Clara. She was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It meant nothing. It was a masterful performance. A year ago, a week ago, it would have worked. But now, his words were meaningless, the empty promises of a bankrupt soul. Samantha laughed. A short, humorless sound. A moment of weakness? Richard, your entire life is a moment of weakness. You're a black hole, a man who consumes everything around him. But you will not consume me, and you will not consume our son. She walked past him, towards the grand staircase. I've packed your bags, she said over her shoulder. They're in the guest room. I suggest you find a good lawyer. You're going to need one. Jonathan Marks is already representing me. I believe you know of him. The mention of the legendary lawyer's name was the final blow. Richard sank onto one of his priceless antique chairs, his head in his hands, the picture of a fallen king. The millionaire who thought he had everything had just discovered he had nothing at all. Samantha didn't look back. She walked up the stairs, her head held high, a sense of profound, liberating peace settling over her. The gilded cage was no more. And for the first time in a very long time, she was free. The days that followed the homecoming were a blur of legal proceedings, media frenzies, and the quiet, steady work of dismantling a life. The story broke with the force of a tsunami. Tech titan Richard Hallberg accused of massive fraud, assets frozen amidst scandalous divorce. The headlines were sensational, the details salacious. Anonymous sources, all carefully orchestrated by Laura's team, leaked details of the affair, the lavish gifts, and the staggering scale of the financial deception. Hallberg Industries' stock cratered, and the board of directors, once Richard's loyal disciples, moved swiftly to oust him, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. Richard, stripped of his wealth and power, was a ghost haunting the edges of his former life. He was forced to move into a modest rented apartment, his collection of supercars repossessed, his designer suits suddenly looking like ill-fitting costumes. The media hounded him, his face, once a symbol of success, now a portrait of public disgrace. Samantha, in contrast, became an unlikely and reluctant hero. She remained behind the gates of the Hollywood Hills mansion, which the court had granted her exclusive use of, creating a sanctuary for herself and Aaron. She refused all interview requests, communicating only through her lawyer, Jonathan Marks. Her silence was powerful, lending her an air of dignity and strength that contrasted sharply with Richard's frantic, desperate attempts to control the narrative. In a tearful televised interview, he painted himself as the victim, a man betrayed by a vindictive wife and a seductive employee. He claimed Samantha was mentally unstable, her actions driven by postpartum hormones. He tried to discredit Laura Vance, calling her a bitter ex-wife with a vendetta. "He's predictable," Laura had said during one of their strategy meetings in Samantha's sun-drenched kitchen. "When a narcissist loses control, he has only two moves: play the victim or burn everything to the ground. He's trying to do both." But his attempts were futile. The evidence Samantha had gathered was irrefutable. The SEC investigation was proceeding at lightning speed, and whispers of a federal indictment were growing louder. For Samantha, the victory was bittersweet. There was a grim satisfaction in seeing justice served, but there was no joy in witnessing the complete destruction of the man she had once loved. In the quiet moments, when the lawyers were gone and the house was still, a profound sadness would wash over her. She mourned not for the man Richard had become, but for the man she thought he was, for the future she had believed they would have. "Are you okay?" Aaron asked one evening, finding Samantha in the nursery, silently rocking in the chair they had picked out together. The room was painted a soft, calming blue, filled with the promise of a new life. "I will be," Samantha replied, managing a small smile. "It's just complicated. I thought my life was a fairy tale, and it turned out to be a cautionary one." "It's a comeback story," Aaron corrected her gently. "And the best part is just beginning." Aaron was right. Amidst the chaos of the legal battle, a new life was taking shape, not just for her baby, but for Samantha herself. Stripped of the identity of Richard Hallberg's wife, she was rediscovering the woman she had been before. She started painting again, setting up an easel in a sunlit corner of the house. Her first subject was the view from the window, the sprawling city that no longer seemed to bow at her feet, but instead looked like a landscape of endless possibility. She also began to take an active role in the legal strategy, not just as the provider of evidence, but as a decision-maker. She sat at the head of the table with Laura and Jonathan, her questions sharp, her insights invaluable. She was learning about finance, about corporate law, about the intricate dance of power and money. One of the most surprising developments was her relationship with Laura Vance. The two women, brought together by the shared experience of being betrayed by a Hallberg man, forged an unlikely bond. They discovered a mutual respect that blossomed into a genuine friendship. "You know," Laura said one afternoon over lunch, "I've spent my career cleaning up the messes of powerful men. But you're the first wife who didn't just want a settlement. You wanted to burn the whole corrupt system down and plant a garden in the ashes." Samantha laughed. "Is that what I'm doing?" "That's exactly what you're doing," Laura confirmed. "You've taken control of Hallberg Industries. The board is in chaos. They need a leader. The SEC is looking for a sign of stability. The company has good bones, despite Richard's corruption. It could be saved." "What are you suggesting?" Samantha asked, though she already knew. "I'm suggesting that the largest shareholder, which after the divorce settlement will be you, should take an active role. I'm suggesting that you should be the one to lead Hallberg Industries out of the darkness." The idea was audacious, terrifying, and utterly thrilling. Samantha, the art history major who had been relegated to the role of hostess and arm candy as the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company? It was insane. And yet, why not? She had a better understanding of the company's corrupt inner workings than anyone. She had the support of a brilliant financial mind in Laura, and she had a motivation that no other CEO could claim. She was fighting for her son's legacy, to transform a name tainted by scandal into one synonymous with integrity and resilience. "I'll think about it," Samantha said, a slow smile spreading across her face. The thought took root, a seed of ambition planted in the fertile ground of her newfound freedom. The world had expected her to crumble, to take her money, and disappear. But Samantha Hallberg was done doing what the world expected. She was ready to build something new from the ruins of her old life. The comeback story was just getting started. 2 months later, Samantha gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Theodore, not after Richard's dynastic ambitions, but after the Greek word Theodoros, meaning gift from God. He was her gift, her anchor, her reason for the fight. Holding him in her arms for the first time, she felt a love so fierce and pure it eclipsed all the pain and betrayal of the past. This was her future. This tiny, perfect human being. The divorce was finalized in a quiet, unceremonious court proceeding. Richard, facing a mountain of federal charges, had no fight left in him. He agreed to all of Samantha's terms. The settlement was staggering. Samantha became the majority shareholder of Hallberg Industries, the legal owner of the Hollywood Hills mansion, and the recipient of a sum of money that ensured she and Theodore would be secure for life. The hidden assets, the villas and penthouses, were all seized by the government. Clara, the mistress at the center of the storm, had vanished. Faced with potential complicity charges, she had cooperated with the SEC in exchange for immunity and disappeared into obscurity, her 15 minutes of infamy over. Peter Vance, Richard's CFO and Laura's ex-husband, was not so lucky. He was indicted alongside Richard, his brilliant financial artistry leading him to a future behind bars. On the day the settlement was finalized, Samantha stood before the board of directors of Hallberg Industries. The room was filled with grim-faced men in expensive suits, the same men who had once patronized her at company galas. Today, they looked at her with a mixture of fear and respect. With Laura by her side as her chief advisor, Samantha laid out her vision. She wasn't there to liquidate the company or to continue Richard's ruthless practices. She was there to rebuild it. Hallberg Industries has been poisoned by a culture of greed and deceit, she said, her voice ringing with confidence. But its foundation is strong. Its employees are brilliant and innovative. We have an opportunity not just to save this company, but to transform it into a model of ethical leadership and corporate responsibility. She announced her first executive decision, a complete, transparent audit of the company's finances, to be led by Laura Vance. She outlined a new employee profit-sharing program and the creation of a charitable foundation funded by a percentage of the company's profits, dedicated to supporting women in tech. It was a radical vision, a complete departure from Richard's cutthroat ethos. There was skepticism in the room, but there was also a glimmer of hope. Samantha wasn't just another corporate raider. She was a phoenix, rising from the ashes of her husband's destruction, determined to build something better. The media, which had been so fascinated by the scandal, was now captivated by the story of her reinvention. From betrayed wife to visionary CEO, Samantha Hallberg's unlikely second act. She was no longer defined by Richard's betrayal, but by her own strength and vision. Life settled into a new rhythm. Her days were a blend of board meetings and baby feedings, of corporate strategy and lullabies. It was challenging, exhausting, but deeply fulfilling. She had her sister Erin, who had moved in permanently, acting as a co-parent and chief of staff. She had Laura, her friend and trusted confidant. She had a team of loyal employees who were inspired by her leadership. She was building a life and a company on her own terms. A year later, Hallberg Industries, under Samantha's leadership, was thriving. The stock had rebounded, and the company was gaining a reputation for its innovative products and its ethical, employee-centric culture. Samantha had proven her doubters wrong. She wasn't just a figurehead. She was a natural leader, with a sharp mind and an intuitive understanding of people. She had sold the cavernous Hollywood Hills mansion, finding its gilded rooms too full of ghosts. She bought a beautiful, light-filled home in a quieter, family-friendly neighborhood, a place where Theodore could run in the backyard and where the scent of money was replaced by the smell of jasmine and freshly cut grass. One afternoon, while she was at a local park, pushing Theodore on the swings, a man approached her. He was handsome, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He introduced himself as Ben, a pediatrician who worked at the local hospital. He didn't recognize her as the famous CEO Samantha Hallberg. He just saw a mother playing with her son. They started talking, easily and naturally. They talked about their work, about their love for the city, about the simple joys of a sunny afternoon. For the first time since Richard, Samantha felt a spark of connection, a gentle hum of possibility. Their relationship grew slowly, organically. Ben was everything Richard was not. He was kind, patient, and genuinely interested in who she was, not what she represented. He was unimpressed by her wealth and unfazed by her past. He loved her for her strength, her intelligence, and the quiet resilience he saw in her eyes. He was wonderful with Theodore, treating him with a gentle affection that made Samantha's heart ache with a new kind of joy. Watching them build a sandcastle together, their heads bent in concentration, Samantha realized that she had finally found what she had been looking for all along. Not a grand, dramatic passion, but a quiet, steady love built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect. One evening, as they sat on her porch after putting Theodore to bed, Ben took her hand. "I read about you," he confessed quietly. "About everything you went through. I just want you to know how much I admire you." Samantha smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "That part of my life feels like a story about someone else now." "It is," he said, his gaze steady and sincere. "You're not that person anymore. You're the woman who is building an incredible company, the mother who is raising an amazing son, and the woman that I'm falling in love with." Tears welled in Samantha's eyes, but this time, they were tears of gratitude. She had survived the fire and had emerged not just unscathed, but stronger, brighter, and more herself than ever before. The final piece of her past was laid to rest on a crisp autumn day. A letter arrived from the Federal Correctional Institution where Richard was serving his 10-year sentence. Her first instinct was to throw it away, unopened, but curiosity and a sense that she needed this final closure made her pause. She sat in her sunlit kitchen, a cup of tea growing cold beside her, and read the letter. It was not the angry, manipulative diatribe she had expected. The man who wrote the letter was a shadow of the arrogant titan she had known. He was broken, humbled, and seemingly, finally, remorseful. "Samantha," it began, "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. What I did to you, to our family, is unforgivable. I spent my life building an empire of lies, and I lost the only things that ever truly mattered. I was a fool, blinded by my own ego. I hear things, even in here. I hear about what you've done with the company. You've made it something better, something I never could have. You've built it on a foundation of integrity. You were always the better part of me, and I was too stupid to see it. I don't expect a reply. I don't deserve one. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I finally see the incredible woman you are. I hope one day you can tell our son that his father made a terrible mistake, but that his mother was strong enough to build a better world from the wreckage. Be happy, Samantha. You've earned it. Yours, Richard." Samantha folded the letter, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of release. The final ghost had been exorcised. She looked out the window at her beautiful, ordinary life. Theodore was chasing butterflies in the garden, his laughter echoing in the clear air. Ben was due home soon, and they were going to cook dinner together. Later, she had a proposal to review for a new, groundbreaking piece of technology her company was developing. Her life was full, not with the empty opulence of the past, but with the rich, meaningful texture of love, purpose, and connection. She thought of the password that had been the key to his downfall, the key to her freedom. Invictus Maneo. I remain unconquered. Richard had thought it applied to him, but he had been wrong. It was her mantra all along. She had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and public scandal, and she had not only survived, but she had triumphed. She had remained unconquered, and in doing so, she had found a life more valuable than any fortune, a love more real than any fairy tale, and a strength she never knew she had. She was, finally, and completely, free. In the end, this was never just a story about a millionaire and his mistress. It was about the incredible, unshakable power of a woman who refused to be a victim. Samantha Hallberg didn't just get revenge, she got redemption. She transformed her pain into purpose, turning the ruins of a life built on lies into the foundation of an empire built on integrity. She proved that the greatest strength isn't found in wealth or power, but in resilience, authenticity, and the courage to rewrite your own story. Her journey is a powerful reminder that even when your world shatters, you have the power to build a new one, stronger and more beautiful than before. What did you think of Samantha's incredible transformation? Let us know in the comments below. If you were inspired by her story of strength and resilience, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories.